When I was only 13 years old, I discovered that sometimes the people who should take care of you the most are the real enemies in your life. The story I'm going to tell you today is my story, an example of sadness and depression, but even more so, of overcoming. Hello, my dears. My name is Louise Miller, but everyone knows me as Grandma Lou. I'm 73 years old, and I was born in Riverdale, in the suburbs of Philadelphia in 1952. Today I'm going to tell a story that I've carried in my heart for over 60 years, something I've never told even my own children. So if you're watching me now, please leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, because your support gives me the courage to talk about things that, even after so much time, still hurt as if they happened yesterday. Before I start my story, I wanted to thank you all. That's a lot of people, my goodness. To thank all of you across this great country, we're going to give away $200 at the end of the month. To participate, just be subscribed, hit the notification bell, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. It could be from Oregon, it could be from South Carolina, it could be from New Hampshire, it could even be from outside the US. I want to get to know all of you. Well, my story begins in 1965 when I was 13 years old. We were a simple family, living in a small 3-bedroom house in Riverdale. My father, George, worked as a truck driver, making deliveries throughout Pennsylvania. He was gone for days, sometimes entire weeks. My mother, Connie, was a seamstress and laundress, taking in clothes from the wealthy ladies in town to wash and iron. Our house always had clotheslines full, sheets swaying in the wind. I was the 4th child, the only girl after 3 boys. Anthony was 19, Joseph 17, and Robert 15. In my father's mind, having a daughter after 3 boys was a blessing from God. He called me his little princess, kept candy in his shirt pocket to give me when he came back from trips, carried me in his arms until I was 11, even though I was already getting big. When he was home, I felt like the most protected person in the world. But my father was home less and less. The trips were getting longer, the deliveries more distant. Sometimes he'd be on the road for 20 days. And it was during one of these long absences that everything started to change. It was March 1965. The heat was still strong in Pennsylvania. My mother had gone to deliver clothes to a client and left me at home with my brothers. "Take care of the house, Louise," she said before leaving. "Your brothers will be here. Ask them for help if you need anything." That afternoon, I was washing dishes in the kitchen sink when I felt someone behind me. It was Anthony, the oldest. He came close, too close, in a way he had never done before. "Louise, you're becoming a young lady, you know," he said, with a different voice that gave me chills down my spine. I tried to move away, but he grabbed my arm. "What are you doing, Tony?" I asked, frightened. "Let me go. I'm finishing the dishes." That's when Joseph entered the kitchen. I thought he would argue with Anthony, defend me, but the smile on his face told me otherwise. They had planned something. I could feel it. Robert appeared shortly after, leaning on the doorframe, with a look I had never seen before. "Mom won't be back until tonight," said Joseph. "Nobody will know." What happened in that kitchen that afternoon is something that still makes me nauseous to remember. They were my brothers, the people who should protect me, defend me. But that day, they were my executioners. The 3 of them, together, planned, as if I were an animal, a thing, not their sister. When it was over, Robert, the youngest, who was only 15 years old, said something that haunts me to this day. "If you tell anyone, nobody will believe you. They'll say you're a liar, that you wanted it." I stayed lying on the kitchen floor for almost an hour after they left. I couldn't get up. I couldn't stop crying. When I finally managed to move, I went straight to the bathroom. I showered until the water ran out, scrubbing my skin until it was red, as if I could clean away what had happened. When my mother arrived, pretending everything was fine, was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. "Is everything okay, Louise?" she asked, noticing my swollen eyes. "Yes, Mom. Just a little headache." That night, I locked my bedroom door and pushed the dresser against it. But it didn't help. The next morning, when my mother went to the market, they came back. Anthony broke down the door with a push that threw the dresser aside. "No use locking yourself in, silly," he said, with Joseph and Robert right behind him. "This house is ours too." And so began my personal hell. Every time my mother left, Every absence of my father was a sentence. They took turns. One would watch if anyone was coming, while the others— I can't even complete the sentence. The abuse became more frequent, more violent. They knew exactly when they could act. They knew my mother's routine better than she did. They knew that on Tuesdays and Thursdays, she would deliver clothes and then stay chatting with the neighbors in the late afternoon. They knew that on Saturdays, she went to the market and took at least 2 hours. And they knew that my father would only return after many days on the road. I began to change. From a cheerful, talkative girl, I became a shadow. I stopped eating properly, lost weight, always had dark circles under my eyes. At school, my grades plummeted. I, who had always been a good student, began to get low grades, to miss classes. "What's happening to you, Louise?" my teacher asked one day. "You've always been so diligent." I wanted so badly to tell the truth at that moment. But Robert's words echoed in my head. "Nobody will believe you." And I myself began to doubt what was happening. Had I done something to provoke it? Was it my fault? I tortured myself with these questions every day. At home, I started dressing differently. I wore baggy, ugly clothes, trying to hide myself, make myself invisible. I cut my hair short, stopped smiling. I did everything I could to not draw attention. But nothing worked. Things only got worse. One day, after a particularly violent abuse, Joseph held me by the arms while Anthony approached my face. "If you try to tell Dad when he gets back, we'll say you came on to us, that you've been teasing the boys at school too, that you're no good." Who do you think he'll believe? His 3 sons, or the girl who's been acting all strange? Their manipulation was cruel, calculated. They knew exactly what to say to keep me silent, to make me feel guilty. They even started making up stories for my mother, saying they had seen me talking to older boys on the corner. "Louise is getting flirty, Mom," Anthony would say at the dinner table. "The other day I saw her chatting with a guy who already works." My mother would look at me suspiciously, worried. "Is that true, girl?" "No, Mom. I swear it's not." "She's lying," Joseph would insist. "We saw it." Gradually, they destroyed my relationship with my mother too. She began to distrust me, to watch me more, but not in the way I needed. She watched to see if I wasn't giving reasons to the boys, if I wasn't behaving inappropriately. The only thing that gave me strength was thinking about my father's return. When he was home, they wouldn't dare approach me. My father had always been my protector, my hero. If he knew— but how could I tell him? How could I make him believe? Months passed, and my body began to show signs that it couldn't take it anymore. I started having bleeding outside my menstrual period, pains that made me faint, fever that came and went without explanation. One night, after a particularly violent abuse by all 3, I started bleeding heavily. It wasn't menstruation, it was something worse. I felt such a strong pain that I passed out in the bathroom. I woke up on the floor, surrounded by pools of blood, without even the strength to cry for help. Robert found me like that. I saw the panic in his eyes. "Joseph! Anthony, come here!" he shouted. "I think this time we went too far." They carried me to bed, cleaned the bathroom, changed my clothes. They were in panic. "If anyone finds out, we're done for," said Anthony. "We'll say she fell down the back stairs." They left me in the room, still bleeding, but less. The pain was unbearable, but I didn't even have the strength to cry anymore. I just prayed, asking God to take me away from there in any way. That night, by a miracle I can only be thankful for to this day, my father came home early from his trip. He was supposed to arrive only the next day, but managed to finish his work ahead of schedule. I remember him coming into the room, in the dark, to give me a goodnight kiss as he always did when he returned from a trip. I remember him turning on the light when he realized something was wrong. "Louise, daughter, wake up," he called, shaking me gently. His hand touched the sheet wet with blood. "My God, what happened here? Connie, come here right now." I opened my eyes with difficulty and saw my father, my hero, with his eyes full of tears and terror. I tried to smile, tried to say I was happy he was back, but I could only whisper, "Dad, help me." And that was the last thing I said before passing out again. The desperation in my father's voice calling my mother, the chaos that took over the house, the journey to the hospital. All of these are confused parts in my memory. But I clearly remember the look in my brother's eyes when they took me out of the house, carried in my father's arms. A look of pure terror. Not for my health, but for what would come next. They knew that this time there would be no way to hide it. I arrived at St. Helena Hospital almost lifeless. My blood pressure was very low. I had lost a lot of blood. I heard the doctors' voices as if they were very far away, saying things I didn't quite understand. But one phrase was etched in my memory forever. This girl has been a victim of continued and violent sexual abuse. We need to call the police immediately. The emergency room became a whirlwind. My father, who had always been a calm man, began to scream, to break things. It took 3 nurses to hold him back. I had never seen my father like that. "Who did this to my daughter? Who?" he shouted with a desperation that broke my heart. My mother cried in a corner, in a state of shock, rocking back and forth like a frightened child. It seemed like she couldn't process what was happening. While the doctors rushed to stabilize me, a social worker entered the room. She was a young woman, with kind eyes and a calm voice. She approached my bed and held my hand. "Louise, my name is Margaret. I'm here to help you. Can you tell me who did this to you?" I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come out. I looked at my father, destroyed by pain, leaning against the wall. I looked at my mother, who seemed to have aged 10 years in one night. How could I tell the truth? How could I completely destroy our family? It was a group of guys. On the way back from school, I whispered. The lie came out almost without thinking. "I don't know them. They were from out of town." My first lie. It would be the first of many I would tell in the coming months. Lies to protect those who didn't deserve protection. Lies that would corrode me from the inside like acid. I spent a week in the hospital. I had to have emergency surgery. The doctors said the internal trauma was so severe that I almost lost my uterus at 13 years old. I might never be able to have children, they warned my parents. During that week, I didn't see my brothers even once. My father and mother took turns by my side, day and night. My father held my hand while I slept, and when I woke up, he was there, with deep dark circles and an unshaven beard. "I'll find who did this, princess," he promised. "Even if I have to turn this whole town upside down." The police came several times. They asked the same questions, and I gave the same vague answers. I didn't know how to describe the attackers. I didn't know where they were from. I wasn't sure of anything. The officers exchanged suspicious looks. They knew I was hiding something. "Daughter, you need to help us," said a gray-haired detective. "If you don't tell the truth, these men could do the same to other girls." That tormented me. Thinking that my own brothers could hurt other girls, but at the same time, how could I destroy my family? How could I make my father lose not only his daughter, but also his 3 sons? The night before I was discharged, I had an unexpected visit. My mother had gone home to shower, and my father went to buy something to eat at the hospital cafeteria. I was alone in the room for almost an hour. The door opened slowly, and Robert entered. My youngest brother, only 2 years older than me, was unrecognizable, thin, pale, with deep dark circles. He seemed to have aged years in just 1 week. My first impulse was to scream, but he raised his hands in surrender. "Louise, please, I just came to say that he began to cry, something I had never seen him do before. "That I'm so sorry, really sorry." I remained silent, observing this boy who had participated in my torment, now reduced to tears in front of me. Anthony and Joseph said if I didn't participate, they would beat me up, that I wasn't a real man. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't want to. "Go away," was all I could say, "before Dad comes back. He's suspicious of us, you know. He's asked several times where we were that day. He's asking the neighbors if they saw anything strange. Anthony is in panic." I didn't answer. Part of me wanted my father to discover everything, for justice to be done. But another part knew that this would destroy our family forever. "You didn't say anything, did you?" Robert asked, nervous. "If you talk, go away," I repeated more firmly. "I don't want to hear threats." "It's not a threat," he said, approaching the door. "It's just that You know how Dad is. If he finds out, he'll kill us. Literally. And he left before I could answer. I stared at the closed door, tears streaming down my face, because the worst part was that he was right. My father, always so calm and loving, had a limit, and that limit was my safety. I returned home on a Sunday afternoon. My father had cleaned and arranged my room, bought a new bedspread, even painted the walls a light yellow that I had always liked. "So you feel like you're in a new place," he explained. A fresh start. A new, sturdy lock had been installed on the door. My father solemnly handed me the key. "No one enters here without your permission. No one." The first days at home were strange. My brothers hardly appeared when I was in the common rooms. They left early and returned late, avoiding meeting me or my father. My mother tried to act normally, as if everything would go back to what it was before. She prepared my favorite foods, combed my hair like when I was little, tried to make me smile. But there was something broken between us. Something I didn't know if it would ever be fixed. "Daughter, you need to eat," she insisted, seeing that I barely touched the food. "You need to regain your strength." But how to explain that each bite was an immense effort? That I didn't feel hunger, didn't feel anything but a huge emptiness? My father extended his leave from work. He said he wouldn't go back on the road until I was completely recovered and until the bandits were caught. He spent days at the police station, talking with investigators, offering rewards, making posters with the vague description I gave of the imaginary attackers. At night, he would sit on the edge of my bed and hold my hand until I fell asleep. "Nothing bad will happen to you again, Princess," he promised. Never again. But the harm was already done, and it lived under the same roof. The nightmares started almost immediately. I would wake up screaming in the middle of the night, cold sweating, reliving every moment of horror. My father would come running, hug me, try to calm me down. Sometimes I would get so agitated that I needed to take the medications the doctor prescribed. "They're just dreams, daughter," he would say, wiping my tears. "They can't hurt you." But they weren't just dreams. They were memories, memories that would haunt me for decades. At school, things weren't better. Although no one officially knew what had happened to me, rumors spread like wildfire. Small towns have big ears and even bigger mouths. "Look at the girl who was attacked," they whispered in the corridors when I returned to classes almost a month later. "They say it was men from out of town, a whole gang." Some people treated me as if I had a contagious disease, others with a pity so deep that it was almost worse. My friends didn't know how to act around me, what to say, how to behave. I began to isolate myself more and more. I spent the breaks alone, sitting under a tree in the yard, away from the looks and whispers. My grades, which were already bad, got even worse. The teachers tried to be understanding, but I could see the frustration in their eyes. "Louise was such a promising student," I heard the principal comment to my teacher as I passed by her office. "It's a shame all this happened. Will she be able to recover?" At home, the tension was palpable. My father continued his crusade to find the culprits, increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress. My mother tried to keep the peace, always walking on tiptoes, as if fearing that any noise could break our already shattered family even more. My brothers developed different strategies. Anthony, the oldest and their leader, acted as if nothing had happened. Sometimes he even tried to be kind to me, offered help with homework, asked if I wanted to watch television. "I'm worried about you, sis," he would say, with a falseness that made me nauseous. "We have to stick together in this difficult time." Joseph, the middle one, opted for total distance. He spent more time out of the house, got a job at a mechanic's shop, came home just to sleep. When we were forced to be in the same environment, like at dinner, he didn't raise his eyes from his plate, didn't say a word to me. Robert, the youngest, seemed to be as destroyed as I was. He was visibly losing weight, had nightmares like mine, jumped when someone touched him unexpectedly. Several times I caught him observing me from afar, with eyes full of remorse and fear. One night, about 3 months after the hospital, I heard a violent argument in my parents' bedroom. My father rarely raised his voice, so I was immediately alert. "There's something wrong with this whole story, Connie," he shouted. "Can't you see? These boys are acting very strangely." "What are you insinuating, George?" my mother responded, her voice trembling. "For God's sake, they're your sons." And she is my daughter too. Look at her, Connie. Look at what they did to our girl. She doesn't sleep, doesn't eat, doesn't smile anymore. Those eyes are no longer those of a child. That was the fault of those thugs, those bandits that nobody saw, that nobody knows, that left no clue. In Riverdale, where everybody knows everybody, I held my breath. My father was suspicious. His protective instinct was sniffing out the truth behind my lies. Robert almost fainted when I asked where he was that afternoon, my father continued. Joseph can't even look me in the face. And Anthony is aggressive, on the defensive all the time. There's something that's not adding up in this story, Connie. You're delirious, my mother insisted, but her voice betrayed her uncertainty. It's the tiredness, the worry. You haven't slept properly in months. I'm going to discover the truth, my father stated, with a determination that made me tremble. One way or another, I closed my bedroom door and cried silently until I fell asleep. The truth was approaching like a storm on the horizon, and when it arrived, it would sweep everything in its path. It was a Tuesday in June 1966, almost 4 months after my trip to the hospital. That day began like any other in this new, somber routine we had established. My father left early to go to the police station, as he did almost every day. My mother was in the backyard, hanging clothes on the clothesline. I was in the living room, trying to concentrate on a math lesson that I couldn't understand. Anthony entered the room without making a sound. When I realized, he was already sitting next to me on the sofa. I felt my entire body freeze with fear. "We need to talk, Louise," he said, with that falsely gentle voice he had adopted in the last few months. "This situation can't continue like this." I got up immediately, ready to run, but he held my arm. "Calm down, I'm not going to hurt you," he said, but his grip said otherwise. "I just want you to understand something. Dad is suspicious of us. Yesterday he asked Robert a bunch of questions and the kid almost gave everything away. If that happens, the whole family goes down the drain. Is that what you want?" I looked into his eyes, those eyes that used to be of a brother and now were of a monster, and found a courage I didn't know I had. "Let go of my arm now," I said through clenched teeth. "Never touch me again." He seemed surprised by my reaction. He released my arm slowly. "You don't understand, do you? If you tell the truth, Dad will kill us, literally. Do you want to have that on your conscience?" "You didn't think about my life when you did what you did," I replied, with tears streaming down my face. "Why should I think about yours now?" Anthony turned red with anger. He stood up, standing much taller than me, intimidating. "You're going to keep that mouth shut," he said, approaching again. "Or I swear that—" He didn't get to finish the sentence. The living room door opened violently, hitting the wall. My father was standing there, holding a folder of documents, his face white as paper. "Get away from my daughter," he said, in a voice I didn't recognize. Low, controlled, but loaded with a fury I had never seen before. Anthony took 2 steps back, raising his hands. "Dad, it's not what you're thinking." My father threw the folder on the center table. Papers scattered across the floor. I recognized the hospital letterhead. "I just got back from the hospital," my father said, still in that controlled and terrible voice. "I went to get copies of Louise's exams. I wanted to send them to a specialist in Philadelphia." He picked up one of the papers from the floor and held it as if it were something poisonous. "Do you know what it says here, Anthony? The doctor documented your sister's injuries in detail. In detail. And do you know what else he wrote? That these injuries were consistent with repeated abuse over a long period. It wasn't a single attack, as Louise said. It was months." My father turned to me, with tears in his eyes. "Why did you lie, daughter? Why did you protect who did this to you?" I opened my mouth, but couldn't speak. The words were stuck in my throat, suffocated by months of fear and shame. "Dad, she's confused." Anthony tried to intervene. "The doctors themselves said that trauma can affect memory." "Shut up!" my father roared, finally losing control. "I heard the end of your conversation. You're going to keep that mouth shut." "What does she need to keep secret, Anthony? What?" At that moment, the kitchen door opened and Joseph entered. He stopped as soon as he saw the scene in the living room, like an animal caught in the sights of a rifle. "Good that you arrived, Joseph," my father said, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I was just wanting to talk to you, too." Joseph looked at me, at Anthony, at the papers scattered on the floor, and immediately understood what was happening. "Dad, I can explain," he began. But my father raised his hand, interrupting him. "Go call your mother," my father ordered. "And then find Robert. I want everyone in this room in 5 minutes." Joseph hesitated, clearly considering running away, but something in my father's look made him obey. He went out toward the backyard, calling my mother. My father approached me and held my hands. "Louise, daughter, I need you to be brave now. I need you to tell the truth. The whole truth, no matter how painful it is." I looked at Anthony, who was staring at me with palpable hatred. I looked at the door through which Joseph had left. I thought of Robert, who was probably in some corner of the house, hiding from his own nightmares. "It was them, Dad," I finally whispered, the words almost inaudible. "It was my brothers." My father closed his eyes for a moment, as if he had received a physical blow. When he opened them again, I saw that something had changed in him forever. "How long?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Since March, when you made that long trip to Ohio. 3 months, he murmured, doing the math. "My God! 3 months!" My mother came running into the living room with a worried face. Joseph came right behind, pale as a ghost. "What's going on, George?" she asked, looking at the chaotic scene in the room. "Where's Robert?" my father asked, ignoring her question. "I don't know," Joseph answered. "He's not in the bedroom or in the backyard." "It doesn't matter," my father said, standing up. "Louise just told me the truth about who really hurt her." My mother put her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. She knew. Deep down, maybe she always knew. "It's not true," Anthony said, trying to keep his composure. "She's confused, traumatized. She's making this up." "Yes, it is true," I said, with a strength I didn't know I had. "All 3 of you. Since March, every time Mom left." My mother fell to her knees on the floor, sobbing. Joseph leaned against the wall, as if his legs could no longer support him. Anthony remained standing, defiant, but his face had lost all color. What happened next was like an explosion in slow motion. My father, always so calm and contained, transformed into a force of nature. He advanced on Anthony with a roar that seemed to come from the depths of the earth. The first punch caught my brother by surprise, throwing him against the bookshelf. "George, no!" my mother screamed, trying to get up. But it was too late. Years of contained anger, months of impotent frustration, the revelation of the deepest betrayal. Everything exploded at that moment. My father lifted Anthony by the collar and continued beating him while shouting things I never thought I would hear from him. Joseph tried to intervene, pulling my father back, but ended up taking a blow that threw him to the floor. My mother was screaming. I was screaming. The living room had turned into a battlefield. When the neighbors arrived, attracted by the commotion, they found my father being held by 3 men, Anthony bleeding on the floor, Joseph leaning against the wall with a broken nose, and my mother trying to protect me in a corner of the room. "He's gone crazy," someone said. "Call the police." Minutes later, police cars filled our street. Officers entered the house, separating everyone. One of them, who knew my father from the time he spent at the police station, tried to calm him down. "George, for God's sake, what happened here?" My own sons, My father couldn't complete the sentence, choked by anger and pain. It was I who spoke. With surprising clarity, I told everything to the police. Every detail, every abuse, every threat. It was as if a dam had broken inside me, and the truth flowed uncontrollably. The police listened in silence, their faces hardening with each word. When I finished, one of them turned to Anthony and Joseph. "You're under arrest." "And Robert?" a younger officer asked. "Was he also involved?" "Also," I confirmed, with tears in my eyes. "But he was forced by the others. They threatened to beat him if he didn't participate." At that moment, as if he had been summoned, Robert appeared at the door of the living room. He had heard everything, hiding in some corner. His face was soaked with tears, his eyes red from crying so much. "It's true," he said, his voice choked. "I was part of it. I deserve to be arrested too." My father, who was being attended to by a paramedic, looked at Robert with a mixture of contempt and pity. "You are no longer my son," he said simply. "None of you are." Anthony and Joseph were taken handcuffed to the police car. Robert was placed in another, without handcuffs, but equally under arrest. Before getting into the car, he looked at me one last time. "Forgive me, Louise," he said, so low that I almost didn't hear. "I know I don't deserve it, but forgive me." I didn't answer. There was no forgiveness inside me at that moment, just an immense emptiness, as if something vital had been torn from my chest. In the weeks that followed, our family became the main topic of the town. The local newspapers reported the case with sensationalist headlines: "Abusive brothers arrested in Riverdale. Father discovers family horror and turns violent. Family destroyed by terrible secret." The trial was quick by the standards of the time. There was medical evidence, my testimony, Robert's confession. Anthony and Joseph were sentenced to 12 years in prison each. Robert, being a minor and having confessed spontaneously, got a lighter sentence, 6 years in a juvenile reformatory. My father was never the same again. The gentle, smiling man I knew disappeared that June afternoon. In his place remained a shell, a man broken by guilt and anger. He couldn't look me in the eyes without crying, couldn't talk about what happened without his hands shaking. "I should have noticed," he repeated like a mantra. "I should have stayed home more, should have paid more attention. I failed you, Princess." My mother fell into deep depression. She spent days in bed, not eating, not talking. When she finally began to get up again, it was as if she had aged 20 years. Her hair turned completely white in a matter of months. "How didn't I notice?" she tortured herself. "How does a mother not notice something like this?" Our house, once full of voices and movement, became a mausoleum. My brothers' bedrooms were locked, their things stored in boxes in the attic. We never mentioned their names out loud again, as if they were a curse. At school, the situation became unbearable. Everyone knew what had happened. Some looked at me with pity, others with morbid curiosity, as if I were a circus attraction. The whispers followed me through the corridors. "It's her, the girl who was abused by her own brothers. They say the father almost killed the sons when he found out. The whole family went crazy from what I heard. I couldn't take it. After 2 weeks trying to face those looks and whispers, I begged my parents to change my school. But my father had a different idea. "Let's leave this place," he said one night during a silent dinner. "There's nothing for us in this town, just bad memories." In August 1966, we left Riverdale behind. My father requested a transfer at the transport company, and we went to New Hope, almost 250 miles away. A town where nobody knew us, where we wouldn't be the family of that terrible case. We left behind the house, the furniture, the photographs, almost everything that could remind us of the past. We started from scratch, in a small apartment downtown, near the Delaware River. But, as I painfully discovered, no matter how far you run, some things you carry inside you, like invisible chains that never completely come loose. The first months in New Hope were like living in a protective bubble. I, who had always lived in a small, flat town like Riverdale, now found myself surrounded by hills, historic buildings, and a fog that covered everything on cold mornings. It was as if we had ended up in another century, in another world. We began a new life in August 1966. I had just turned 14. My father got a steady job in the transportation company office without having to travel. For the first time since I could remember, he would be present every day. My mother found a small job at a bakery near our home, making pastries. It was less than she was used to as a seamstress, but it kept her busy, away from dark thoughts. They enrolled me in a Catholic school, St. Mary's Academy. There, nobody knew my past. Nobody knew my story. To everyone, I was just the new girl, a little quiet, a little sad, but just another teenager adapting to a change. "We have the chance to start over, Princess," my father would say, as we walked the cobblestone streets on weekends. "Here nobody knows us. Nobody knows what we went through. But I knew. My body knew. My mind knew. The scars were still there, some visible, most invisible to others' eyes. The nightmares didn't stop with the change of town. Almost every night, I would wake up screaming, cold sweating, feeling hands that didn't exist touching me. My father would always run to my room, hug me until I stopped shaking, sometimes staying all night sitting in a chair beside my bed. "It will pass, daughter," he promised, stroking my hair. With time, it will pass. But it didn't pass. In fact, the nightmares became more elaborate, more realistic. Sometimes I dreamed that my brothers had escaped from prison and found me in New Hope. I would wake up so terrified that I couldn't breathe, as if invisible hands were squeezing my throat. My parents took me to a doctor who prescribed sleeping pills. But the pills didn't prevent the nightmares. They just left me trapped in them, unable to wake up. After a few even worse nights, I stopped taking them. At the new school, I tried to adapt. The nuns were strict, but fair. The other girls tried to approach me, curious about the student transferred in the middle of the school year. But I built walls around myself, invisible but impenetrable. You never talk about your old town, a classmate named Teresa commented one day during recess. Do you miss it? No, I answered dryly. I don't miss anything from there. What about your friends? Your family? I don't want to talk about it. Soon they gave up trying to get information out of me. I became known as the weird one, the unfriendly one, the one with no friends, and I preferred it that way. Friendship meant trust, and I didn't know how to trust anymore. At home, my parents tried to rebuild some normality. My mother decorated the small apartment with flowers, colorful curtains, small objects she bought at the market. My father brought books, chocolates, anything he thought might make me smile. But there was a ghost between us, or rather, 3 ghosts. We never talked about my brothers, never mentioned their names. It was as if they had died, as if they had never existed. But their absence was a constant presence, a black hole that sucked all joy. At night, I would hear my mother cry softly in her room. My father would try to console her. But how do you console a mother who lost 3 sons to prison and discovered they were monsters? How do you deal with the guilt of not noticing, not protecting your youngest daughter? I should have seen it, George, she would say between sobs. How does a mother not notice something like this? It's not your fault, Connie, my father would respond, with a tired voice that didn't convince even himself. They deceived us all. 6 months after we moved to New Hope, an envelope arrived in the mail. It was from the State Reformatory for Juvenile Offenders. A letter from Robert. My father was furious, wanted to burn it without opening it. My mother begged to read it. I just stood there, paralyzed, looking at that piece of paper that had the power to reopen all the wounds. It's addressed to Louise, my mother said, showing my name on the envelope. She has the right to decide. My father looked at me, his eyes full of pain and anger. You don't need to read this, princess. You don't need to let them back into your life. I took the envelope with trembling hands. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Part of me wanted to tear it into 1,000 pieces. Another part wanted to know what he had to say. I'll think about it, I answered, putting the letter in my pocket. I don't know yet. I carried that letter with me for weeks. In my room, at school, on walks around town. Sometimes I forgot it was there. Other times it was all I could think about. What could Robert say that would change anything? What words could heal what he and the others had broken? On a Sunday afternoon, alone in my room while my parents had gone to Mass, I finally had the courage. I opened the envelope carefully, as if it might contain something dangerous. The handwriting was small and cramped, covering 4 entire pages. I began to read, my heart racing. Dear Louise, I don't even know where to start. Maybe by saying that I don't expect your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. What we did to you was unforgivable. I wake up every day in this place with the same question. How could I do something so horrible to my own sister? I won't make excuses. I won't say it was just Anthony and Joseph's fault, that they forced me. Yes, they pressured me, they threatened me, but I had a choice. I could have said no. I could have told Mom, Dad, someone. I could have protected you, as a brother should. Instead, I became your tormentor, part of your nightmare. I'm doing therapy here. The psychologist says I need to understand why I did what I did, to never repeat it. He says I have a chance to rebuild my life when I get out of here. But first, I need to fully recognize the harm I caused. And I do recognize it, Louise. Every day, every night, every moment you suffered because of us. I carry this with me like a weight that never goes away. I'm not asking you to answer me. I'm not asking to return to your life. I just wanted you to know that I'm deeply sorry, and that, if I could go back in time, I would have been the brother you deserved. If someday, many years from now, you feel you can give me the chance to ask for forgiveness in person, I'll be waiting. But I understand if that day never comes. I hope you're managing to rebuild your life away from here. I hope that one day you find peace. With sincere remorse, Robert. When I finished reading, I realized I was crying. They weren't tears of sadness or anger, but something different, something I couldn't name. A confused mixture of emotions that left me exhausted. I put the letter in a drawer and never answered, but I didn't destroy it either. Somehow, those words written on paper were an acknowledgement of what had happened, a confirmation that it hadn't been a nightmare, that I wasn't crazy. The months passed, turning into years. I adapted to life in New Hope, to the slower pace, to the traditions of that historic town. At school, I remained isolated, but gradually some classmates broke through my barriers. They didn't become close friends, but they were acceptable company. One of them, Martha, the pharmacist's daughter, was the first person I trusted with a bit of my story. I didn't tell her everything, obviously, just that I had gone through something very difficult in the other town, and that's why we moved. "It must have been horrible," she said, without pressing for details. "It was," I answered, surprised by my own sincerity. "But I'm trying to move forward. If you need to talk, I'm here," she offered, with a simplicity that touched me. It was the first time someone offered help without seeming to be dying of curiosity, without asking 1,000 questions, without looking at me like a freak, just offering presence, company, an ear if I needed it. At home, things slowly improved. The nightmares didn't completely disappear, but they became less frequent. My mother stopped crying every night, began to smile occasionally, especially when she brought home funny stories about the ladies who frequented the bakery. My father remained overprotective, wanting to know where I was every minute, calling the school if I was 10 minutes late getting home. But even that diminished over time, as he saw that I was, somehow, surviving. In 1968, 2 years after our move, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived, this time from the state penitentiary. It was from Anthony. Unlike Robert's letter, this one was short, almost abrupt. "Louise, I know you'll probably tear this up without reading it. I know you hate me, and you're right. What we did has no excuse. I'm writing because I heard that Robert sent you a letter. He's trying to play the remorseful one, the good guy, but don't believe him. He participated in everything of his own free will. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm paying for what I did. Here in prison, when they find out why you're in, your life becomes hell. Not even the worst criminals respect someone who does what we did. Maybe that gives you some comfort, knowing we're suffering. I hope so. Anthony." This letter, unlike the first, I tore into pieces and threw in the trash. I didn't tell my parents I had received it. I didn't want to reopen that wound, didn't want to see the look of pain in their eyes. Anthony's words haunted me for days. Not out of remorse or pity for him, but because they confirmed something I had always suspected. Robert wasn't just a victim of circumstances. He had chosen to participate, as Anthony said. A few weeks later, a third letter arrived. From Joseph. I didn't even open it. I threw it directly into the fire, watching the paper be consumed by the flames, wishing my memories could be destroyed with the same ease. In 1970, when I turned 18, a difficult decision presented itself. Robert had served his sentence and would be released. He didn't know where we were, but he could find out if he wanted to. The possibility of a reunion, even an accidental one, terrified me. "Do we need to move again?" I asked my parents during dinner. "What if he comes looking for us?" My father, who didn't know about the letters, was surprised by my sudden concern. "He doesn't know where we are, Princess. And even if he found out, I would never let him get near you." "But you won't be with me all the time," I argued. "What if I run into him on the street? What if he shows up at school?" My mother, who was quieter than usual, finally spoke. "Maybe it's time to face these fears, daughter. We can't run forever." I was shocked. My mother, who had plunged into depression after discovering what happened, now talked about facing it, about not running. "What do you mean, Mom?" "I mean that life goes on. Robert served his sentence. You're growing up, you'll be going to college soon. We can't live in fear forever. My father looked at her as if she had gone crazy. Are you defending that monster? No, she answered firmly. I would never defend what they did. But Robert was the youngest. He was influenced by the others. Maybe what? My father interrupted, his voice rising. Maybe we should invite him to dinner. Pretend nothing happened? George, that's not what I'm saying, and you know it. I just think that living with so much hatred, so much fear, isn't getting us anywhere. Look at us. We pretend we're a normal family, but we're not. We're stuck in that day, in that living room, forever. That was the first time I saw my parents argue seriously since the discovery of the abuse. It was as if a floodgate had broken, releasing years of repressed feelings. Would you lose your son? My mother continued, crying now. Would you never see Robert again? Not even to hear what he has to say? He's no longer my son, my father answered, but his voice had lost its conviction. None of them are. I observed that discussion in silence, feeling something strange grow inside me. It wasn't forgiveness. It would never be forgiveness, but maybe it was acceptance. The acceptance that what happened was part of my story, and that running wouldn't change that. I don't want to see Robert, I finally said, interrupting their argument. I'm not ready for that, and maybe I never will be. But I also don't want to run again. This is our home now, our life. My parents looked at me, surprised by my firmness. I realized that for the first time since the abuse, I was making a decision about my own life, not just accepting what they decided for me. I'm afraid, I admitted, but I don't want that fear to control every step I take for the rest of my life. My father stood up and hugged me, strongly, like when I was little. You're the bravest person I know, Princess, he said, his voice breaking, much braver than me. That night marked a turning point in our family. It wasn't a magical cure. The scars remained. The nightmares still appeared occasionally. The painful memories sometimes emerged out of nowhere. But something had fundamentally changed. For the first time since everything happened, I felt that I could have a future that wasn't completely defined by my past. In 1971, I was accepted to the College of Education in Philadelphia. I was going to move, live in a dorm with other students, start an independent life. My parents were proud, but also terrified. Are you sure you're ready, daughter? My mother asked, while helping me pack. Philadelphia is a big, dangerous city. I'm ready, Mom, I answered, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I can't let fear prevent me from living. That night, on the eve of my departure, I had a different dream. It wasn't a nightmare, like the many that had tormented me for years. It was a dream of liberation. I dreamed that I was in an open field, under an infinite blue sky, and that I could run without stopping, with nothing holding me back, with no one chasing me. I woke up with tears in my eyes, but for the first time in a long time, they were tears of hope. Philadelphia in 1971 was a completely different world from New Hope. Tall buildings replaced the colonial houses, wide avenues instead of stone alleys, crowds of strangers instead of familiar faces. In the first days at the student dormitory, I felt fear. That old fear that accompanied me like a shadow. But there was something different now. A new determination. A strength I didn't know existed inside me. The dorm was in the University City area, a busy place full of young people. We were 6 girls sharing a 3-bedroom apartment. My roommates were loud, cheerful, full of plans and dreams. So different from me, who carried invisible scars that no one there knew about. Louise, you're always so quiet, said Christina, my roommate, a girl from Pittsburgh who studied law. You need to go out more, enjoy life. Gradually, I opened up. Not about my past. That remained a secret kept under 7 keys. But about my tastes, my opinions, my dreams for the future. I discovered that I liked music, especially Simon and Garfunkel, who were very popular at that time, that I had a talent for drawing, that I loved small children. You're going to be an amazing teacher, Christina told me one day, after seeing me help the neighbor's child with homework. You have patience, you have affection. That's what children need. The College of Education opened my horizons in ways I never imagined. I learned about child development, psychology, teaching methods. Each class was like a window opening to a new world, a world where I could make a difference in the lives of other children. Traumatic childhood experiences can profoundly mark emotional development, my educational psychology professor explained one day. But with adequate support, human resilience is surprising. Those words touched something deep inside me. Resilience, the capacity to recover, to adapt, to grow despite adversities. That's what I was building, day after day, without even realizing it. My parents called me every week, worried, missing me. During the first holiday, when I returned to New Hope, I noticed how they seemed older, more tired. My father, who had always been a strong man, now had hunched shoulders as if carrying an invisible weight. My mother, despite smiling more, sometimes had a distant look, lost in thoughts I could only imagine. "Are you okay?" I asked during dinner. "We are," my father answered, holding my mother's hand on the table. "We just miss you, Princess." During that visit, I realized that it wasn't just me who needed to move forward. My parents were also stuck in the past, reliving that terrible day over and over. It was as if time had stopped for the three of us in June 1966. "You need to live too," I told them the night before returning to Philadelphia. "You can't spend the rest of your life just waiting for my visits, worried about me." My father smiled, that sad smile that had become his trademark. "It's easier said than done, daughter." "I know," I answered, hugging him. "Believe me, I know." Back in Philadelphia, I immersed myself in studies with even more determination. I wasn't just building a future for myself. I was trying to prove that it was possible to overcome the past, that scars could become marks of a battle won. In my second year of college, I met John. He studied engineering at the university and lived in a dorm near ours. We met at a birthday party of a mutual friend. He offered me a cup of soda, commented on the music playing, and we talked for hours about everything and nothing. John was different from the other guys who had tried to approach me. He wasn't insistent, didn't try to impress me. He had a calmness, a natural gentleness that made me feel safe around him. "Can I call you sometime?" he asked when the party was ending. I hesitated. Relationships weren't part of my plans. The idea of intimacy, of trusting someone to that extent, terrified me. "Just to talk," he added, noticing my hesitation. "No pressure." I nodded, feeling a mix of fear and a new emotion I couldn't name. John called 3 days later, and the following week, and the next. Our conversations were simple, about books, movies, classes, the future. He never asked about my past, never forced topics that made me uncomfortable. On our first date alone, we went to the movies to see Love Story, which was a hit at the time. When he tried to hold my hand in the dark, I reacted instinctively, moving away as if I had received an electric shock. "Sorry," he murmured, without insisting. "I won't do anything you don't want." That phrase, so simple, so obvious, but so powerful, echoed in my head for days. "I won't do anything you don't want." It was the first time someone had said that to me, who recognized my right to say no, to establish boundaries. In the following weeks, our friendship grew. John was patient, respectful, never crossed the boundaries I established. When I finally had the courage to hold his hand during a walk through Fairmount Park, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. "There's something in your past that hurt you a lot, isn't there?" John asked one day, while we were sitting by the Schuylkill River. "You don't have to tell me. I just want you to know that, when you're ready, if you ever are, I'll be here to listen." I felt tears in my eyes. How did he know? How did he understand so well what I felt without me needing to explain? "Thank you," was all I could say. Our relationship progressed slowly, at my pace. Each barrier I managed to overcome was celebrated as a victory. The first kiss, months after we met. The first time I talked about my family, albeit superficially. The first time I introduced him to my parents during their visit to Philadelphia. My father, always protective, examined him with suspicious eyes. My mother, more intuitive, immediately noticed that John was special. "He has good eyes," she told me later, when we were alone. Eyes of someone who respects. In 1974, in my last year of college, I received news that shook my world again. Anthony and Joseph had been released for good behavior after serving just over half of their sentences. The letter informing me about this came from my former lawyer in Riverdale, who thought I should know. "They don't know where you are," he assured me in the letter. and they've been forbidden from trying to make contact. Even so, the fear came back with full force. What if they looked for me? What if they wanted revenge for having been imprisoned? For days, I couldn't sleep, started having nightmares again, began to see dangers in every shadow. John noticed something was wrong, but didn't pressure me. He just was there, offering silent support, respecting my space. It was at this moment that I made a decision that would change my life forever. I was tired of running, tired of allowing fear to control my existence. If I really wanted to move forward, I needed to face my demons once and for all. "I need to tell you something," I said to John one night, sitting in the small apartment he had rented after graduating. "About my past, about why I am the way I am." He held my hand, his eyes full of understanding. "Only if you want to, Louise. It doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be ever if it's too painful." But I needed to. For the first time, I told the whole story. From the first day in the kitchen of my house in Riverdale, to my father's discovery, my brother's imprisonment, our escape to new hope. I spoke without stopping, the words coming out like a torrent dammed up for years. John listened in silence, holding my hands, silent tears streaming down his face. When I finished, emotionally and physically exhausted, he hugged me with such gentleness that I started crying again. "You're the strongest person I've ever met," he said simply, "and I love you. Nothing you told me changes that. Nothing." That night marked the true beginning of my healing. Sharing my story, my darkest secret, and being accepted, loved despite it, or perhaps even more because of it, was liberating in a way I never imagined possible. In the following weeks, with John's support, I made another difficult decision: to confront my brothers. Not in person, I wasn't ready for that yet, but through letters. 3 letters, one for each of them. To Robert, I wrote about how his participation in the abuse, even being the youngest, even claiming to have been coerced, deeply hurt me. I told him how I spent years trying to understand how my own brother, whom I loved and trusted, could be part of something so horrible. "I don't hate you anymore," I wrote at the end, "but I can't completely forgive you either. What I can do is wish you find peace, rebuild your life, never cause pain to anyone again." To Joseph, my middle brother, always distant, always cold, I wrote about the anger I felt for years, how he, who should have protected me as an older brother, chose to join Anthony in the abuse. "I hope the time in prison made you reflect," I wrote. "I hope you understand the gravity of what you did. I don't want to see you again. I don't want to have contact, but I want you to know that I won't live in fear of you anymore." The letter to Anthony, the leader, the instigator, was the hardest. For days, I stared at the blank paper, unable to find words that expressed the depth of my pain, my anger, my contempt. "You stole my childhood," I ended up writing. "You stole my innocence, my trust, my ability to feel safe. For years, you controlled my life through fear. But that ends now. I'm not afraid of you anymore. You have no more power over me." I sent all 3 letters on the same day, without expecting a response, without wanting a response. It was a symbolic act, a declaration of independence. From that moment on, I would no longer be defined as a victim of my brothers. I would be defined by my own choices, my own path. In December 1974, I graduated in education. My parents were in the audience, proud smiles on their aged faces. John was by my side, clapping louder than everyone when I received my diploma. 2 weeks later, he proposed to me. "I don't have much to offer besides my love," he said, showing me a simple ring. "But I promise to take care of you, respect your boundaries, build a life where you feel safe and loved." I hesitated, not for lack of love. I loved John more than I imagined it was possible to love someone, but out of fear. Fear of not being able to be a complete wife. Fear that my scars were too deep. "What if I never can? You know," I murmured, embarrassed. "What if the trauma is too strong?" John smiled, that gentle smile that won me over from the beginning. "Louise, marriage isn't just about that. It's companionship, it's friendship, it's building something together. The rest comes when it comes, if it comes. And if it doesn't come, we'll still have all that." We got married in March 1975, in a simple ceremony in New Hope. It was a sunny day, scented with cherry blossoms. My father walked me down the aisle, tears in his eyes. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, princess," he whispered. "Every day I thank God that you survived, that you became this incredible woman." Our married life began in a small apartment in Philadelphia. John worked at a construction company. I got a job as a teacher at an elementary school. We were young, in love, full of dreams. Physical intimacy was a challenge, as we expected. There were nights of tears, of painful memories resurfacing, of panic. But John never pressured me, never showed frustration. He waited patiently, loving me the way I could accept. In 1976, I discovered I was pregnant. It was a mix of joy and terror. The doctors had said I might never be able to have children due to the damage caused by the abuse. And part of me feared not knowing how to be a mother, how to protect a child, when my own childhood had been so violated. "We'll manage," John assured me, holding my hand as we looked at the first ultrasound. Together. Mary was born in January 1977, a healthy girl with her father's eyes and, they said, my smile. Holding her in my arms for the first time was like a miracle. So small, so perfect, so trusting of the world, with no idea of the evil that could exist. "I'll protect you," I promised, kissing her soft forehead, always. Being a mother healed me in ways I never imagined possible. Seeing Mary grow, completely trusting me, showed me that I could be strong, that I could protect, that I could love without reservations. When Peter was born in 1980, and then Anna in 1983, our family was complete. My parents aged, seeing the grandchildren grow, finding in the little ones a joy I thought they would never see again. My father especially seemed to revive through them, playing, telling stories, being the loving grandfather he was always destined to be. In 1985, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Robert. I didn't open it immediately, left it on the kitchen table for days, unsure what to do. Finally, on a quiet Sunday, while the children played in the backyard and John read the newspaper, I took courage. "Dear Louise, I received your letter years ago and understood your position. I didn't expect a response, nor am I expecting one now. I just wanted you to know that your letter changed my life. Your words, harsh but fair, made me truly see the harm I caused. In the last few years, I've rebuilt my life. I finished my studies, got a stable job, met a good woman who knows about my past, and still accepted me. I do therapy regularly and work as a volunteer at an institution that helps children who are victims of abuse. I'm not asking to return to your life. I know that's impossible. I just wanted you to know that your words had an impact, that they didn't fall on deaf ears, and that I wish, from the bottom of my heart, that you have found the peace and happiness you deserve. If one day you want to respond, to know more about my life now, I'll be happy. But I perfectly understand if you prefer this to be the last communication between us. With affection and sincere remorse, Robert." I showed the letter to John, who read it in silence. "What do you want to do?" he asked simply. I thought for a long time. The wounded girl inside me wanted to tear up the letter, ignore that Robert existed. But the woman I had become, teacher, wife, mother, could see something beyond anger. "I think I'll respond," I finally decided. Not to resume contact, not to completely forgive, but to show that I survived, that I built a good life despite what they did. My response was brief, containing only basic information about my life, my marriage, my children, my career as a teacher. I didn't include photos or an address, just a simple account of who I had become. "I'm glad you found a path to redemption," I wrote at the end. "That's the most I can say right now." I never received news from Anthony or Joseph. Years later, I learned from an acquaintance from Riverdale that Anthony had died in a bar fight in 1990, and that Joseph had moved to the West Coast, losing contact with everyone. Robert responded once, thanking me for writing, saying he was married and expecting his first child. I didn't respond this time, and he respected my silence. Life continued its course. My children grew up, strong and secure, without knowing about my dark past. My father passed away in 1992, in peace, knowing I was well. My mother followed him 2 years later, passing away in her sleep, as if she didn't want to stay without him any longer. John and I grew old together, watching our children graduate, marry, give us grandchildren. The love between us, which began so hesitantly, grew and transformed into something deep and unshakable. He never stopped being that patient man who respected my boundaries, who made me feel safe. In 2010, already a grandmother of 4 grandchildren, I made a decision I never imagined I would make. I wrote to Robert asking to meet, not for him, but for me, to definitively close that chapter. We met at a cafe in downtown Philadelphia. He was very different, gray hair, deep wrinkles, reading glasses. He didn't look at all like the teenager who participated in my torment. We talked for almost 2 hours about our lives, our children, our regrets. I never stopped being sorry, he said, his eyes down. Not a single day. I know, I replied, surprised to feel no anger, just a distant sadness, and I hope you never do. It wasn't a reconciliation meeting. There were no hugs, no promises to keep in touch. It was a closing meeting of definitively turning the page. When we said goodbye, he asked, "Were you able to be happy, Louise? Despite everything?" I thought of John, of our children, of our grandchildren, of the life we built together. Yes, I answered sincerely, very happy, and that was the greatest victory, not having allowed those months of horror to define my entire existence, having chosen life, love, happiness, despite the scars. Today, at 73, I look back and see a difficult path, but one that was worth traveling. I'm a grandmother of 7 wonderful grandchildren, a retired teacher who helped hundreds of children, a woman who learned that the worst wounds can heal if we give them time and care. My dear ones who have watched me until now, thank you for listening to my story. If I'm telling this today, after so many years of silence, it's because I believe it can help someone who is going through something similar. To say that there is hope, that there is a path beyond the pain. If you're facing your own valley of shadows, remember, you are stronger than you imagine. Healing can be slow, it can be difficult, but it is possible. Believe that. And before I say goodbye, I wanted to thank the 20,000 subscribers. That's a lot of people, my goodness. Don't forget to leave a like on this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any story. A loving kiss from Grandma Lou, and see you in the next video.